Okay, hello and welcome to On the Nine with Brandon and Kaii. I am your co-host, Kaii Marie.
And I am the other co-host, Brandon Jones.
So we are very excited for our conversation tonight regarding the Black community, especially, or specifically, I should say, regarding our Black leaders, air quotes. So we're going to be talking about these people that have kind of emerged in our communities as leaders. And we're going to talk about some stories that have come out recently about them and just kind of begin to have a question as far as how are their actions in our community and in their personal lives? How is all of that helped to kind of propel us forward as a community? Has it benefited us? And what we need to start doing to really cultivate a social wellness or well-being in our community. So we're looking forward to diving right into it tonight. So hold on to your seatbelts. We got Brandon here, so you already know.
Yeah,
You already know what it's about to be. All right. So the first topic, here we go. So our topic tonight, what is community in 2021 and beyond? Building a strong and powerful community for future generations. So all we're talking about tonight, it has to do with us understanding the importance of what we do now impacts the future. So I'm sure everyone has heard about this Shaun King story. So I'm going to just kind of talk a little bit about it, and then Brandon's going to jump in. So Shaun King, he purchased a home in the New Jersey area. And this home was, I think, over how expensive was this home? I think it was almost $1 million.
it was close to me. I think it was about an $800,000.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, how a community activist is able to afford a home that expensive would definitely like to know, because the community activists in my neighborhood, they definitely were not living in $1 million neighborhoods at all. So, Brandon, when we see stories such as this, and there have been a lot of stories that have come out regarding Shaun King, him, even regarding his race, that has been going on for years. How he managed money and the different organizations that he kind of started, and then all of a sudden the organizations are over, and then he starts a new one. And we even had Tamir Rice's mom who came out and said, like, y'all need to, I'm paraphrasing, you need to watch what this guy is doing. He's not doing the work that you think he's doing. So tell us a little bit about this story. And we definitely want to get your thoughts on it. And what is it saying about us as a community?
Yeah. So I think really to talk about this story a little differently than other people have already talked about it is to talk about what is activism in 2021 and beyond. This is not the activism of the 60s and the 70s, or even a part of our whole kind of Black Power awakening moments that we've had in the 80s and into the 90s. This is different. This is a more social media activism that is really foundational, based on a grift. And for folks that don't know what the word or the term grift or grifting, these are people who are out to take opportunities to make a dollar. And when you look at a Shaun King, when you look at Brother Polight, we'll get to him in a moment. When you look at just BLM in general, they are they utilize the trauma and the experiences that we've had to uplift themselves to a level of having a career. This isn't a career now. And guess what? These are activists on a higher level. But guess what? These activists, they're activists on a smaller level who do the same thing. They might not be making as much the same amount of money, but they are also still grifting off of the pain and strife of other people. We have to be very careful with folks like Shaun King because there's a lot of questions. He definitely has a huge following, and he has a huge following. Why? Because he's able to connect to the minds and hearts of people that are in pain. And when you're able to do that, you can sway folks to do a lot of things. It really reminds me of Jim Jones. And for folks who don't know about the cult leader, Jim Jones, now I'm not saying that Shaun King is a cult leader, but what I'm saying is when you have people who are in pain, they are easily manipulated, especially when they're confused as well. They're easily manipulated to follow into things or to follow people or idolize individuals. And we have to understand that we're human and we all have a dark side. And one day we'll talk about the dark side of psychology. And sometimes our dark side can get overinflated once we get a level of attention, a level of power or influence. That dark side can take over, and that's when you see a lot of people being harmed long term. Now, to me, honestly, I think people got a little overreactive with this. And what I mean by that is Shaun King and his family deserve to have a house. And this house is in New Jersey. I don't know about you, but New Jersey ain't the cheapest place to live, right? Mm-hmm. And he also stated now there are some question marks though too, so I ain't letting him off the hook that easy. But he also stated his wife bought this house, which I thought was kind of strange. Now his wife is a professional woman. You know, they got this home. This isn't the extravagant homes like we've seen from some of the other Black Lives Matter folks who are getting them $1.5 million homes in Chino Hills and all that type of stuff.
Yeah, we're getting into that tonight too.
This actually looks like a house that you would see in where I live. Like this looks, and it's expensive to live where I live too. But, and that's just the state. That's not me trying to humble brag or nothing like that. But this looks like a kind of a regular old house. It's probably 4 or 5 bedrooms. It doesn't look like anything super extravagant. It has it's a 2-car garage. Like that house probably is about $800,000, give or take, given where we are at in today's market, given where he probably lives. That don't look too bad. Like, but again, we also have a concept that activists are supposed to be broke. Not in 2021. Not when you have hashtags and cash apps and Venmos and PayPals. That's not the activism today. Everybody's out here to get $1. That is the capitalist American way. And if I can get $1 off your trauma, your pain, and your back, I'm going to do it. A lot of other people do it. And unfortunately, that may be what's done here. The reason why Shaun King has a huge following is because he also shares constructive information that people connect to. Whether you like it or not, he's still giving you something. And if you're going to come up out of your pocket, are you going to blame Shaun King for that? Or are you going to blame yourself? And I think that as we keep moving forward, we have to look at individuals like a Shaun King, a Dr. Umar Johnson. These folks that can get money just by a post, they can generate a couple $1,000s just from a post or going live. What does that say about us as a community to reinvest in those folks if we feel like the information they're giving us is not enough?
So true. And so the thing is, Brandon, because, what happened with Shaun King's story, he was like, you know what, me and my family now have to move because his address and everything was plastered everywhere. And he felt that because of that, it was no longer safe for his family. So him and his family are not going to be moving into this house. So what he has done instead is he's going to look for a different home. He just asked for a little help to do that. So he's coming to the community and has a fundraiser to raise funds to help him move into a different home. Now, one thing I wanted to mention in preparing for our conversation tonight, I saw something that was interesting. How many of you guys have heard of Lee Merritt? I'm sure everyone has heard of him, right? So apparently him and Shaun King are friends. And Lee Merritt has posted on his social media asking his followers to help for financial assistance to help Shaun King move out of his house. This was in Yahoo News. So he being Shaun King, has people who are, front and center in very much so kind of like in mainstream media, who have the names that we all can recognize, who are also helping him with this fundraiser to help him move out of this house into a different home. So what are your thoughts on that, Brandon?
I think that is really ironic, right? It feels like that's kind of strange that I get a house, people find out about it, it's put into I think it was the New York Post that kind of outed them and whatnot.
Yes, New York Post.
And now I get so much criticism from my house and people can identify where it's at. And now you got heat on you and now you're going back to the community and say, okay, now give me donations so I can move. And it's like that's the irony. Like when you are a public figure, these are the things that you have to keep in mind, is that when you get put out on display, heat's going to come. And are you going to face the heat? Or are you going to run and then ask your constituents for money to move out. Like that's a very interesting space to be in. I find it very concerning that he needs help from you to move out the house, when he was able to move in it without no issue. So it's like that don't make sense to me, to be completely honest. And honestly, one thing that I do want to make sure that we highlight, and we're going to talk throughout tonight, as Black folks who believe in Shaun King, who follow him, you should feel insulted by him asking you for money for him to move. That's his responsibility. Mm-hmm. And I didn't say this earlier, but honestly, as a man, it's kind of his responsibility to put him and his family in the house too. That's my perspective. So for him to use that scapegoat of, well, my wife bought this house, what the hell are you doing? Like if it's not a collaborative effort, why are you allowing your wife to just like be the one who buys the house? Like, why wouldn't you do that together? That don't make no sense to me. And if it has a reason to do with him being a controversial public figure, well, there's ways around that, because there's a lot of other celebrities who can buy homes through companies and things like that don't have that same thing. So either you have bad business practices, mm-hmm. or you have a relationship that is not a cooperation, or you are not ready to face the heat and do this type of work. And if to me, it has to be one of those three things, or I'm missing something in the story. But at the end of the day, it has me raising my eyebrows on what is he doing and why is he doing it? And is this somebody that you really should be following?
I totally agree. And I will say something, because we, in other episodes, not on this podcast, but in the other one, the Healing Element podcast, my podcast that you've been on several times, we talked about like patterns of behavior. And so I wanted to get your thoughts on this. So again, in reading a little bit of background about him, everyone knows the conversation has been brought up about his race. And is he actually biracial? Is this factual or is this made up? So what I noticed, not so much about that question, but when he is asked about it, he says that his mom told him that his father was a light-skinned Black man. And he doesn't. And so, when he pressed about it, he says, well, I don't ask my mom questions about her sexual escapades. Literally, that's like, you're not asking about her sexual escapades, right? You just want to know who your father is.
Who's my daddy?
Right? Like, you're not like, mama, I'm gonna need a list of all the men. Like, nobody's asking for that. So I find it interesting, right? So he pushed that off on his mom. Like, listen, instead of really addressing that, listen, that's my mom's business. It's not for me to try to figure out any more information than what I already know. Then we look at his wife, who supposedly bought this house. Listen, I didn't buy this house. My wife bought this house for me. Mm-hmm. So,
Black woman is God. That's his queen. Put it on God. Don't question God. Don't question the queens. Don't even question me, because it ain't me. My hands is clean. Again, I find that concerning, just as a man, and just being on just kind of manhood and manhood principles. Like, you have to step up and take some accountability and responsibility for your actions. And asking for donations for you to move, I feel like that's weird to me. Like, in our community, if we want to talk about empowering ourselves, we should not be donating to someone because they make posts that make us feel good for them to move out of their house. Like, that sounds crazy. Like,
And what other community is doing this? I mean, so you have people in our community that said, listen, Shaun King, we don't like, maybe it's how, understanding the prices of New Jersey homes, but how there was already questions about how he was moving before this happened.
Right.
And so this was kind of like, okay, so something is definitely up. So the community that raised this concern about how you're living, you're now going to go to that same community and say, well, it's almost like, since y'all made me have to leave my house, you're going to have to help me get a new house. Exactly. That's kind of the tone that I took with how this happened. And that is totally inappropriate behavior.
Absolutely. And that's why you should be insulted as a Black person who follows him, because to me, it's the same tone and the same behavior as a Joe Biden saying, if you don't vote for me, you ain't Black. Like, at some point, Black folks have to realize that we are being insulted by people who we consider to be our leaders or have our best interests at heart, when they continue to slap us in the face with their actions and the things that they say, and we just cheer them on because they stand, quote unquote, stand up for us. At some point, for us to evolve, for us to be on the nine and to make sure that our wellness is in place, we have to
Mm-hmm.
be very mindful about who we allow to impact our emotional states. This is how we get swindled and
Mm-hmm.
manipulated and hurt by these people, is because we build an emotional connection to them, and we don't think of it as this person is still operating a career, or this
Mm-hmm.
person may be even operating a business. And if they're not giving us a product, or they're not giving us a service or something that they say they're going to deliver on, why do we continue to invest in them and
Right.
defend them when they make mistakes, which we'll get into later?
Yes. And really quick, Brandon, before we go to the next slide, what you're saying is so true, because when you look at different people that are being kind of paraded as our leaders, look at a Biden, even though he's not necessarily a leader in the Black community. I don't know, some may be different, but what he said, right, about if you don't vote for me, you're not Black, and how Black folks that were even questioning Kamala Harris. I'm not even talking about the race. I'm just saying, will she support and champion the concerns of Black Americans who she's trying to get their vote? And she, in an interview, said, no, I'm not going to do anything specifically for African Americans. We weren't offended by that. Instead, I heard a lot of Black folks like, well, she can't do something just for us. And I'm like, do we know how the political system works? But that's a whole nother it's a whole nother episode. But I say that because when people are using shaming language or fear, they're doing that to control you. And we saw that happen during this election. And we see that continuously happen. Anytime Black folks are like, no, wait a second, I don't like how the direction that we're going in. I feel like I'm being left out of the conversation and our needs are not being addressed. Fear and shaming, that's immediately what that type of language starts to come up. Like even with the presidential election, there was the fear of, if you don't vote for Biden, do you know you're going to get another Trump? And you know how Trump treats Black people. It was that whole thing. And so we have to be mindful when someone is using that fear and shaming language, they're trying to control you. And we have to look at it as such. They're not doing this because they're trying to protect you. They're doing it because they're trying to control the outcome and control your behavior.
Absolutely. And really, they're not even trying to control your behavior. They're just trying to get you to come out them pockets. Like they want
Mm-hmm.
the attention to keep to get their blue checks, or to keep them, and to keep their numbers streaming. And they want you to come out them pockets with them dollars. That's it. To keep the
Mm-hmm.
business running. They're not here for the best interest of the community. They may say that, but that's just a sales tactic to keep you engaged. And it's sad that this is how we have to start looking at this stuff with people that we call quote unquote leaders. And you said this earlier, and I think that it's important to continue to have the conversation on, is what other communities have leaders like the Black community? Other people have influencers or people who
Mm-hmm.
may share ideas, but most communities, especially in the United States, they're led by ideology. We're led
Mm-hmm.
by talking heads. There's a
Right.
problem there. Like we have to
Mm-hmm.
understand that, yeah, there may be people that we find that are constructive, that give good information, but when you start to follow them as celebrity, that's when you have
Mm-hmm.
a big mistake, because celebrity and politics don't go very well together. Look at Afghanistan. Like they ain't playing that. I mean,
Not at
we have
all.
to understand that in our society, we have been duped by
Mm-hmm.
ourselves. I mean, we
Mm-hmm.
can put white supremacy to the side for a second and just say, look at us. What happened to the point where we are following individuals because they might crack a joke and make us smile, or they might look attractive or whatever, but they don't carry no substance that's moving us collectively forward. And that's a sad reality, but that's where we are, unfortunately.
So true. And I'm glad you said celebrity, because that's going to come up in our conversation tonight. So I would just want to put a pen in that, because we're definitely going to, somebody even says that, an activist. So we're definitely bring that up. So the next topic that we're going to bring up, I'm sure everyone has heard about this, the co-founder of Black Lives Matter. She went on a shopping spree, not for shoes, not for a purse, but for houses. So the clip that you see here, this is taken from Black Enterprise, in which they reported on this story of how she went off and purchased $1 million high-end homes. And so, of course, she's saying that this money was, she bought these homes. It was not tied to Black Lives Matter. She's a professor, and she worked at a lot of different, it literally says this, I'm a professor. I worked at a lot of organizations. Um, And that's how now I don't know what professor is out buying several $1 million homes, but I need to sign up and get a job.
Yo,
Brandon, what is this?
listen. As a professor, you can make really good money.
Uh-huh.
I am not a professor on her level. I do teach grad school and undergrad. I make really good money from just doing that, and that's part time. But she cannot honestly say that she has not made a fortune without being connected to Black Lives Matter. You know how she made this money? It's not being a professor. It's being attached to Black Lives Matter. It's being invited to speaking engagements. It's being invited to be on councils and task force and things that lead to grants and other pots of money. Yeah, Black Lives Matter might not have written out a check directly to her and she deposited in her bank account, but that affiliation did. And you cannot we wouldn't know who she was if it wasn't for Black Lives Matter. And she knows damn well she did not make all that money to be purchasing $1 million homes without having that stamp of Black Lives Matter. Now, I'm not saying that she shouldn't. At the end of the day, this is capitalism, baby. Get it how you live. But at the same time, don't be denying that's how you did it. Come on now. We can't get crazy like that. And for the fact for her to deny it shows not duplicity, but she's a trickster. Let me just say it that way. You can't trust people who speak on both sides of their mouths. Like, she should have just said, yes, I purchased these homes through the activism work that I've done. I've been fortunate enough to, get to a level where I can buy homes like this. And I'm buying this to create, generational wealth for my children. And this is why, just be honest with it. At the end of the day, I would have more respect for her. But the thing that makes this crazy is she also states that she's a Marxist, which is socialism. But you're not supposed to be doing stuff like this if you consider yourself to be a socialist. You are practicing active capitalism by purchasing homes this big. Now, it'd be interesting if she said, you know what? I purchased apartment buildings in Brooklyn so that people can have affordable housing. She could have still made a whole bunch of money doing something like that. That makes sense to me. But no, she's purchasing homes which is crazy, in white neighborhoods when white people are hunting us. Hello? What are we talking about here? Again, we have to be very careful who these people are. The crazy part about her is she's not in the Black sphere. She's in the academic sphere, which is just as confusing and crazy sometimes. So her making this money is through white dollars, which is also fascinating. Who do you think's cutting these checks for Black Lives Matter or to bring her onto campuses and organizations and galas and things like that to have those conversations? It ain't Black folks. She's not, her and Tariq Nasheed ain't on the same panel conversations together. She's getting that money in a different circle and cycle. So I'm not surprised that she makes that. As a professor, you can make really good money at pretty good schools. And for her to have that stamp of approval in this extremely liberal academic sphere that we have here in the United States, oh yeah, she's making bank. I mean, I make good money doing speaking. I know I'm not getting what she's getting. She's probably getting 5 figures per engagement, which is crazy, if not 6 per engagement. So I'm not surprised that this happened. I'm surprised about how she denied it. And then the other telltale sign that happened that we have to pay attention to is, what did she do after being outed? She resigned from Black Lives Matter. Why? Right? Why? And she doesn't need to be. I mean, she can resign and keep moving forward. She can resign and keep moving forward because she can always say, I was one of the founding members of Black Lives Matter. When Civil Rights 2.0 happened, I was right there on the front lines. She wants to be all the people that we are commemorating and remembering today. That's where she wants to be in 30 and 40 years. She wants that statue. She wants to be invited to the White House and get that medal. That's that's where she wants to be. The activism from 50 years ago to activism now are in 2 different spaces, and she's just positioning herself to make sure that she stays where she's at. Again, we have to move how we think about these folks. And when we see folks like her, she might be, championing the cause for Black folks, but she ain't where you at. She is not where you at.
It's so true. And, I understand, right? We all have to make a living, right? So I'm not going to come, and we live in a capitalist society. And this lady who's a Marxist proved it. That
is just the craziest piece right there. Go ahead.
Right? So, so we're being, Brandon and I are being realistic. Like, you need to eat, you need food to eat, you need money to eat. However, you've built your whole brand business on the deaths of Black men, right? And then when you look at Black Lives Matter, it totally, there is no mention of Black men. So in Black Lives Matter last year, they received, I think, over $90 million. And when I look at that, and then I see all the stories that came out because of the pandemic of all these Black businesses that have are gone forever. A lot of Black businesses struggling to make payroll, and just how the housing crunch, how that is impacting our communities. And then I see Black Lives Matter making bringing in $90 million. And then I'm seeing a co-founder purchasing $1 million homes. You have to begin to question who are propping up these people that are supposedly our leaders. As you said, Brandon, who's cutting the check?
Yeah.
Who's putting these folks in front of us?
Black Lives Matter has merch. I'll just say that. If you go to their website, they have merch on their website. So again, it's all about driving a dollar. It's not necessarily about pumping those resources back in the community. And they never even stated that that's what they would do, right? That's the other thing too. When we start jumping behind trends, and I'll be completely transparent and honest, when Black Lives Matter first kicked off, I was about it. I remember in my Twitter profile, I put a hashtag BLM. I was right there, being ignorant, not understanding, and riding an emotional wave. And then probably about maybe 6 to 8 months later, I started digging into what Black Lives Matter was about. And I was like, wait a minute, like this is all over the place. Like it didn't even make sense to me what they were actually doing. Like it just seemed scattered. And then, over time, people started to actually like point things out and question things, which is fun, which is good. But again, we have to be very careful to just jump on things. When people are talking about being socialists and Marxists, but then they're getting paid, 5 to 6 figures for speaking engagements, and you got merch on your website, it's like, well, what are we socializing? And like, what is the focus of this movement? But again, we have folks in our community that can speak well. They may have good degrees. They may be attractive, right? They may present a certain way on social media. So then you buy in, but in reality, they may be a completely different person. And that's the thing that I have a fear with. Like when you start meeting some of these people, you you start to get a different perspective. Like I've met a few of the people that we could talk about. I met in person, and it's like, yeah, this person is not who I thought they were, and it made me really change the way that I look at them, and then it made me change the way of other people I respect that champion those folks. And I think that those are those opportunities that we don't have in our community enough, where people know people personally and they don't speak up about them. It's just like they just let them do what they do, and they could be raggedy, they could be just finessing the community or whatever. And I feel like here this is a finesse. So I'm a champion the pain in our community, and I'm gonna go out here and I'm gonna say things like white police are hunting us and white people are out to kill us. But then I'm gonna go buy houses where white people are at. Like that just seems so conflated to me, and it's also a dangerous narrative, and it's confusing. But again, we can't invest so much into these folks. And one thing that people may think about as they watch this broadcast and ponder is like somebody like a Tariq Nasheed, right? That's somebody, I don't think we added a slide, but he just hit that $1 million mark for the museum he's trying to put together. And he always gets lumped into this category of these folks who we don't know where the money always goes. But one thing that I will say about Tariq is that when he says he's going to do something, he actually produces it. And even if he asked for money again later, because I heard something about that earlier, he's like, he asked us to help him make a documentary, and he had us all pay for it. Well, yeah, but he told you what he was gonna do. He did. You can't be mad about that. But when these folks ain't telling you, they're just saying hit that Cash App, gifts, donations, and then they tell you they're gonna do something, and then they never do it. Then you got to start scratching your head, because we got several of those people right now, and they still get hundreds of thousands of followers, and they continue to get donations, and they continue to get swindling folks. And it's like, at some point, we got to open our third eye and think about what are these folks doing to us.
So true. And when you said, Brandon, as far as what are they doing for us, like what are the tangibles that we now see? How are our lives changing? For example, and you and I, we did an episode when we were doing the Straight Shots No Chaser series, in which we talked about what was going on in the Asian community when there was the rash of like Asian hate crimes that were going on. And we saw the vice president meeting with Asian business leaders. We have no idea who these people are. But the vice president, Kamala Harris, she met with them, and we saw action taken. We didn't see marching. Well, we saw some marching, but marching came with then action. And what happens with us, we get stuck with the marching, but no action, taking down statues, all of this emotionalism, things to evoke some type of emotion, but no tangibles. And so I want to mention really quick, this is in a BBC News. This came out last November. And so the Black Lives Matter founders, they were getting interviewed, and I'll put this in the chat. And it says that, according to the founders, they said, "We fought to change history and we won." Now, when I looked through that, I said, well, what does it mean that they won, right? Because we're having a conversation of what are they bringing back to the community? So when I looked at this, Kamala Harris.
Yeah, she won, right? It's symbolism, which is important. Let's not get it confused. Symbolism is important, but if you don't do anything with the symbolism, if you don't take that symbolism as an inspiration for you to have a movement within yourself, within your family, and sometimes even within your own community, then what's the purpose of it? I remember when the election happened. I remember seeing a lot of Black women that I know with pearls on and Chucks. I ain't seen a pearl or a pair of Chuck Taylor since. I don't know what the happened. And it's like, I'm serious though. Like, you know it. I know you seen it. I know you seen it. It was just like somebody put a bat signal out, and all the women just automatically women that I ain't never seen wear pearls in their life had pearls on. I'm like, where'd they get the pearls from? And they was like what is going on? But we bought into the symbolism, and that was enough. And it was also fueled by the frustration and hatred of Trump. And once he was out of the way, it didn't matter. It didn't matter what Biden said when he had that press conference with those Black clergy people, and he was just like lighting them up, man. He was telling them, you better get with the Latinos, and I ain't doing nothing for you. Like, he's literally saying these things to you. You should be insulted, but you're not, because he's not Trump, because he's not fueled behind hate. And again, that's all emotionalism. And in our community, unfortunately, we can be some of the most emotional extremist people out there, where people can sway us any direction that they want. And again, with Patrisse Cullors and Black Lives Matter, in theory, yes, that is a great organization. But when you dig deeper, when you get below that surface, it's that symbolism don't matter. That symbolism is not doing what we wanted to do. And then when you're questioned about it, you dip out, or you start talking out the side of your mouth and telling half truths. And now guess what? We're hurt again as a community. We're re-traumatized by our own people, and we start to not believe in ourselves, right? See, this is what niggas do all the time. Like, that's the type of mentality we have. We can't trust no Black person. We're better off having a Shaun King and not knowing if he's Black or white, because we might be more willing to follow him. Like, that's literally where we're at. Like, we're literally there in 2021 when it comes to what leadership is for us. And again, people are human. People are going to make mistakes. People are going to disappoint us and let us down. But at the end of the day, if you don't control their purse strings, you can't hold them accountable. But what you can do is stop following them and engaging with them.
Exactly. And that leads us to our next, this topic here. So we actually talked about this before. I think it was the Straight Shots No Chaser. I'm actually going to put that in the description box so folks can check out those episodes. So this is Cadillac. They decided to, I guess, celebrate Blackness, and they worked with Tamika Mallory to do that. So they have the Audacity of Blackness campaign. And according to Cadillac, they've done this. I should say, the Audacity of Blackness, according to Cadillac, is an expression of the glorious, resilient display of Black accomplishments, born from resilience and innovation that have changed industries, communities, culture, and the world. So that's that. So I wanted to go back to when you said celebrity. So I'm sure everyone who's watching that you saw that there was a lot of pushback when this came out. Like, what is going, again, questioning the activism. And so I was reading up on how Tamika Mallory was responding to this. And she said, well, you know, you expect this to come with when you become a celebrity. So you're talking about, so we have activists,
Yes,
and we've morphed activism, entertainment, and political, and it's all kind of morphed together. And therefore, we're not getting anything really accomplished in any of those areas because everything is morphed together. It's very confusing. So, Brandon, when you saw this, this wonderful Cadillac,
I was like, damn, that's a nice Cadillac.
it made you want to go get one.
I need one. Tamika look good too, so you definitely want to be in the Cadillac with Tamika. Man. But no, I mean,
what
again,
is this?
Tamika, she's attractive. But
So she is. I'm not taking away from her. I'll come up as a hater.
But it's like, again, in our community, though, we have to be honest. Our leaders have always had celebrity status. If we want to truly be honest. And it depends on who you consider a leader, right? From Marcus Garvey to W.E.B. Du Bois, from even Booker T. Washington had a level of celebrity. I mean, he was rubbing shoulders with some of the who's in the U.S. at that time. You know, there's a reason why somebody like Martin Luther King can rise to that level of status. It's not just the message, but it's also the persona. You know, there's a reason why Malcolm was a great person for the Nation of Islam, a front man, a spokesperson. If we want to be honest, that's what Malcolm really was. He was really kind of like a parrot, if we want to be honest, to Elijah Muhammad. He was a spokesperson for the nation, and he had that persona. You know, we can continue on. We can look at even some of the athletes at the time. You know, there's a reason why Muhammad Ali was as big as he was. It wasn't just because he was a phenomenal boxer, but he had persona. Persona works for us. The entertainment value works for us. And unfortunately, one of our kind of destined positions in this society has been to entertain. You know, even when we have Black folks that don't say things that we all agree upon collectively, we say what? They're tap dancing. So we even have language around what type of entertainment is acceptable and what type of entertainment isn't. So for us, celebrity is just another control mechanism for how we're supposed to function in this community. So for Tamika Mallory to really come out of nowhere, I mean, she comes from that that tree of oh my God, Reverend Sharpton. I almost said Jesse Lee Peterson. That's another problem. I don't know where that came from, but yeah. She comes from that tree of Reverend Sharpton, and you know his political action network, but she really came out of nowhere. Like I think she probably had a buzz in the New York tri-state area, but then on the national stage, she just kind of emerged out of nowhere. So for her being a Black woman going through the struggle, speaking up for justice, and now being on a national platform where she's invited to these Democratic conventions and she's on the Breakfast Club, that is celebrity. So get that bag because that's what everybody else is saying. And let's be honest, she probably listens to the same music many of us listen to. She has that same mentality. I'm out here getting it. I can at the same time I can speak for my people and get the bag. And that's how she's rolling. But when she's criticized, the funny thing is she didn't back off though. She didn't do what Patrisse did. She said, "Look, this is what it is. You don't like it, move on." And she gonna keep pumping out Cadillac because Cadillac cutting them checks. And at the end of the day, that might be the type of person we need that we need to lead us, and saying, "Look, this is what we need to do." But at the end, I just hope that her efforts are not just for her to get the bag, but they're also to help her. I've heard Tamika speak when she was here in Minneapolis shortly after George Floyd was murdered. She probably gave one of the best speeches I've ever heard. I mean, she laid it out. So, she's down, I think. But at the end of the day, we can't criticize her for also making money. But again, all of our activists that are on a national level, let me say it that way, are celebrities. They're all celebrities because that's how we accept them. So is that an issue for her? Should she not take the check? or is that an issue for us? What type of activists do we want?
Yeah, I think that, and I know we're going to dive into that more, but definitely for us, we need to start checking and setting our expectations. And just as you would in a relationship, right? If you're in a relationship, you have certain expectations in that relationship. So we need to begin to set a standard for how we want to be treated in the society that we live in. And the thing with Tamika, I did listen to her speech, and it was like it hit I was sending around to everybody, like, oh, y'all need to check this out. And then as things started to unfold, I was like, wait a second, let me take back everything that I was out here sending around with her speech. But it did hit the points. And it spoke to the frustration that we have as a community. And so I saw that she has this book coming out, or I think it's already out, called State of Emergency. So I was like, oh, what's this about? So I was like, oh, maybe I should check this out. And then I saw, I think the forward or something was written by Cardi B.
Oh wow. I
And I
didn't
was
realize
just kind of like, it took all the
celebrity.
air.
Yeah.
Cardi. So this is a book that's supposed to be about Black folks, their plight in this country. I don't know. Be your own leader, guys.
Queen Cardi. But again, you know, that's the celebrity part, right? Cardi B is like Dominican. So like if we're gonna, I mean, I ain't trying to get into one of those ADOS foundational black conversations.
Oh, you wanna go there.
But I don't want to go there at all. But if we think about it, like, is that the right person to even be part of talking about the struggle here? Because the Dominicans have a different journey, even to this country and even through the slave trade than what we have as Black American folks that that our lineage was here. So that's even interesting. But again, now we're talking about culture because Cardi B definitely represents Black culture at the end of the day. That's why Joe Biden talked to her not once but twice, because that's who our representation is. But again, is that if we talk about leadership, is Cardi B the Black female leader that you want, or the Black leader that you want to put out on display? Because politically, that doesn't do well. That does not do well at all to have a woman who is explicitly talking about what she does and has done and continues to do like that. What kind of, there is no morality in that. And in politics, you got to have some tact and morality, and none of that's there. And she sounds crazy. She's ad-libbing in the middle of conversations with a potential presidential candidate. That is crazy. Like we have to, but again, that's acceptable for us because it's cute. It's Cardi. We love her. She's revolutionary. She can twerk. Like she looks fabulous. Like at some point, what does it have to do with us moving forward? But again, we have accepted a very lower standard on who we will allow to lead us and who to step up. So Tamika's just riding a wave at this point. And let's be honest. Cardi B did not write no damn forward to no book. Okay, she barely writes her own lyrics. And like, let's just be honest, like she didn't write no forward to a book. She might have talked to somebody and
she signed her name.
She didn't even do that, man. Like, come on. Let's be honest. Cardi B didn't write nothing. And hell, Tamika might not have wrote that book. She might have had a ghostwriter too at this point.
Probably.
She's reached this level where it's a machine now. She's a brand. She's a brand. She has to keep the Tamika Mallory brand going, and she's got an opportunity. Don't be surprised if she don't get a talk show pretty soon. She's gonna ride this wave as she goes, and she's got the book. She's got the justice angle, and next thing you know, she's on own with a show. Like this is where we are in today's society, and she speaks very well. She's very articulate, so it can all work out for her in a pretty constructive way. But again, are we as a community, do we want people to represent us like that, or do we want them to entertain us? Because politically, I don't think that that's the best situation.
Totally agree. And that takes us right into, oh boy.
Dun, da, da, da.
Everyone's been waiting for this one. Brother Polight.
Man, how could you not this?
So with this case, obviously very serious case right now that he's dealing with, and the details are still coming out. So we're not going to dive too much deeper into it, but we're just going to talk about overall the issues that have come up over the course of several years regarding Brother Polight. So right now, as you can see on the screen, allegedly charged with raping his girlfriend's underage daughter in Miami. So that information is still being put out. I think he recently did a live Facebook video, which I don't really know I don't know what the angle was. So if you guys, I don't know if you've caught it or not, but the angle was like, I got money, I help other people. Say that again.
Stunting.
Yeah. And I was just like, so is this trying to help his case? So, and I'm sure a lot of people here, especially if you are familiar with the conscious community, there's a lot of stories that have come up that he has taken advantage of a lot of folks and basically just kind of ran off with their money. And this is someone that, even though all of these issues have emerged over several years, he's still considered a leader. Brandon, can you speak to this, please?
Well, before we talk about any fraud, the accusations that he's being arrested for are very serious.
Yes.
And I'm very concerned that I'm seeing people saying, well, we need to wait till all the facts come out. And denying this young woman and her mother the courtesy that this is something that did happen. As a therapist, as a psychologist, as somebody that personally knows sexual assault victims and women that have been either molested or raped, this is something that's serious. And we should not be saying we need to wait till the facts come out. We need to take what that woman said as the gospel until justice is done. And when it comes to violating children, I'm sorry, but I'm not down with that. I don't think that we need to wait until this, and I don't think we need to be comparing this situation to other white folks who've been in relationships like, what's his name? Not Tom Allen. What's his name? Woody Allen?
Oh,
who had a relationship. I've seen all that stuff. This is not the time for that. This young woman has been violated, okay? Regardless of what, something happened. Little girls don't just come out and say this, and cops don't find semen stains on things, okay? Something happened that was inappropriate at the end of the day. A grown-ass man should not be in a hotel with a 14-year-old girl while the mom is in another hotel room. That is weird. I'm sorry. So, but where there's smoke, there's fire. Polight activity, and if you've been in this kind of community for a while, you have questions about Polight before this. I mean, he has gone from he has been connected to fraud since he's been in the damn conscious community for the most part. He's even been connected to other sexual assault, but people still accept him because, again, we accept people who can talk to us and connect to us on an emotional level regardless of what they do. He's praised Dr. York, Malachi York. For folks who don't know, please do some research on him, who is convicted on fraud and has been alleged to a lot of sexual assault. And his victims are still out there in the conscious community making videos and stuff, and they appear on things. He's also been associated with having like 135 kids or something. It's like there's deviance, okay? At the end of the day, there is deviance there. Where there's smoke, there's fire. This man has championed someone like that. That should be enough for you to say, that's not something that I want to even buy into. Yeah, he might bang on white supremacy, but guess what? White supremacy did not allegedly rape that young girl, did not assault that young woman. Okay? We have to at some point in time, we have to see people for who they are and move on. The fraud piece, if you are fool enough to send this man any money, and not get something directly in return and be told to wait, that's on you at that point. His job is done. And if you can't sniff that out and you buy into him because he's talking about some metaphysical stuff that sounds good when you are in a place of pain, you have to look at yourself and say, is this the right thing for me? And unfortunately, Polight is one of many people in this community that has been able to finesse fools. And I say fools because you are a fool if you can't understand that just because it sounds good doesn't mean that it will be good. And please believe, if you can't snap out of that when evidence has been put into your face and people have to come out on lives and address things and then disrespect you again, we got insulted again today as a collective because I'm going to come out here and stunt in the Rolls Royce. I'm going to have some crazy ass shades on. And I'm going to talk about how much money I got. I'm not going to defend myself. I'm not going to talk about how in the community these types of accusations are significant and we need to be very careful. And this is how men get locked up. It was none of that. It was, I got money, so who's going to stop me? And I might get your daughter next. That's the impression that I got from it.
Yes, it was extremely concerning. And I have seen, the man trying to set him up. And again, it's looking at patterns of behavior. We need to stop making excuses for poor behavior, period. And what we're seeing here, and I'm not trying to compare this to the Shaun King, I'm just looking at how our response to when we are being insulted, when people are preying on our community, and we still say, well, either everybody makes mistakes or we just turn our face to what they're doing because they make us feel good. We can't survive if we move in this world purely on emotion. And these folks that are elevated to become these leaders, they know that. They know to say, well, they always go after the Black man, or they always go after the man who's trying, because they know that, yes, in this country, there is a history of the United States going after. So they'll play on that part. They'll play on the emotional part of that. But we have to begin to really use wisdom and look at a pattern of behavior that people have in our community. And also, which we're going to get into next, is to stop looking at others to be our leaders.
Man. So here are 3 strategies for your mental. So we got to think about this, right? We talked about a lot of different things. Shaun King, Polight, Patrisse Cullors, Tamika Mallory. And there's other names that we didn't talk about. Umar, who still ain't got a school.
This is a long time ago. We gave him money, right? Because we were like, oh, this is great. I have yet. This was back in 2000. Oh my God, we're in Connecticut.
So this is back to 2016,
right?
That's already a bad sign.
No invoice, no update, no nothing. So, lesson learned.
Yeah, but did you really expect to get anything? I mean, again, we have to be very mindful. I mean, we can talk about Jay Morris. I mean, there's a lot of these guys out here who are saying they're going to do stuff, but they're not. Shout out to JT Pocket Watch. I don't know if you know Pocket Watch with JT, but that's a great channel. So if you want to see what's happening and somebody who actually knows finance and business and taxes and goes through actual documentations on these folks, you start to see, oh, this is not what it's actually said to be. But since we don't want to look at documents or even look at people who are giving us documents, then we push to the side. We have to trade in celebrity for facts. When facts show up, leave celebrity to the side. So only idolize people you personally know. And this is important. I look at people as influences. Like one of my biggest influences, Dr. Amos Wilson. I don't personally know Dr. Amos Wilson. He died before I even understood who he was. But at the end of the day, I can have influence by the work that he's done. But when you start idolizing people, especially people you can't touch, people you don't know personally, that's when it becomes extremely problematic. Because there's a saying that you don't want to meet your heroes. I don't know if you've ever heard that. But when you meet people that you idolize, they're not always who you think they are. They're not that entertainer or that athlete or that, that political figure that you think, and you will get let down very quickly. I'll never forget when I met Adrian Peterson. I'm in Minnesota. I met AP. I was like so excited. And he was just a regular old country dude. I'm like, this dude, what the I was so excited to meet him. He's doing the same thing I was doing in the club. I met him outside the club. In the club, I'm like, this dude's just physically gifted, MVP. Specimen of a man. But he's just a regular dude. I was like, man. But again, when you idolize people, when you start to see people as bigger than life, that's when you get in trouble. Because that's when you've emotionally attached to something that you can't control, and then you can be easily manipulated. So that's number one. We can go to number two. Number two, be inspired by others, but you are the leader in your life. And this is important. So you have those inspirations, but at the end of the day, you are your leader. Earlier in today's broadcast, what we talked about is other communities are led by ideologies, missions, visions, focuses, things like that They get inspired by others, but they don't let Harrison Ford lead them into donating hundreds of thousands of dollars until they can't do anything. Are there other
Not
scammers?
Harrison Ford.
I'm just using a white. Now, if you talk to a white man, they love them some Harrison Ford. Even his old crusty butt today, they still love him. Talk to a white person, ask them, who's an American hero? We're gonna go to. They want to say Arnold Schwarzenegger, but then they realize he ain't from here. But then they'll say Harrison Ford. That is your typical white person's go-to person. It's Harrison Ford. But again, do white people get finessed out of money and get scammed? Absolutely. But they don't get scammed like that by their leaders. And this is the quote unquote who they call leaders, because they follow movements. They follow ideology. We have to do the same thing. We follow personality. Personalities can be shifted. Personalities can be extremely manipulative. And when you do that, you will end up continue to get hurt. You will also run into other people who can't see. They're not using the third eye, and then arguments happen online. But ultimately, what ends up happening is you get a lot of fighting between two separate groups. So right now, we're seeing people who back Polight. They want to support Polight. And then you see people who are like, man, this is crazy. I knew something was up. I'm not ever going to even associate myself with this individual again. And now you have those two people arguing and fighting, which is controversial. And then number 3, in a capitalistic society, racism is a business. Now we've moved away from talking about how white supremacy in today's broadcast, how white supremacy shows up. I stated earlier, white supremacy is not causing, 14-year-old girls to be sexually assaulted. But since racism is such an emotional driver, it is a capitalistic engine. It builds money. Tamika Mallory can't get a Cadillac deal without talking about fighting injustice and racism. Right? Talcum X, aka Shaun King, he can't get these donations and ask you to move him out of a house that you didn't move him in without being able to associate that with the pain of racism. Pretty much Polight got on live tonight stunting on us and talking about the white devil. That's pretty much what he did. Okay? Racism is a business. It is not just an action that white people have on non-white folks. It is a business driver. And right now, it is one of the main economic forces we have. And for you to know that is going to be important, because you might be able to slide up on a bag or two yourself, and you can be able to avoid people who are just utilizing your emotional state for them to get their bag. There is some good that needs to be done and can be done from a racism standpoint and eliminated racism. But there are also people who are out here swindling folks and that are out here playing the fox, and they will catch you. And when you get caught, you don't want to get caught, but when you do get caught, unfortunately, the only person you can blame is yourself.
So true. Thank you so much, Brandon, for providing those 3 points. So important. And especially the leadership part of being a leader, all of it. But the leadership part really spoke to me because it's so important that we begin to be accountable for our own actions. And for me personally, I listen to a lot of people. I listen to folks that, probably their ideologies may fall more so Republican. And I listen to folks that are kind of in the middle. Sometimes those people are hard to find, but there are some folks in the middle. And also maybe folks that more so align with democratic belief systems. And I take a little bit of information from both, and then I draw my own conclusions and then make a decision on how I need to proceed with, whatever it is that I'm trying to accomplish. So for us, that's why it's so important to be your own leader in your life. Take the information that you get from these different folks, think about it, analyze it, and look to see like, okay, so is there an agenda here? Is there something that they're trying to push? Because everyone that's coming to you has an agenda. No one's ever just kind of coming to you because for no reason at all. There's always a purpose behind it. So begin to just think more so in a way of not just allowing them to play in your emotions, but okay, what's the angle that they're trying to have? And I think we need to do that with entertainers. I talk about Diddy often, but I mean, the vote or die and all the other stuff that he's doing, we need to begin to realize that all of these folks have agendas. And also something that you said, Brandon, about the machine. What we see on social media with our celebrities and politicians and everybody else, that is the image that they want us to see. It doesn't mean that's who they really are. It may feel like it because we're in their home while they're cooking dinner. They have a whole production team with them, or they have some type of what is it? Their publicist of like, hey, listen, right now it'd be great for you to get on with the husband, with the wife, do something about, like, they have a team behind them. It's just not them just like, oh, hey, I think I'm gonna get on. Like, there's a whole machine behind them, and need to be able to realize that we're not getting an in, we are getting what they want us to get so that they can push their agenda.
And they're gonna keep pushing it. The grift is real, and it has been grifting season, and we have to be very mindful of what we buy into and what we don't. And when there's smoke, there's fire, man. Like,
Mm-hmm.
pay attention, don't fall, don't be swindled into these folks thing. I mean, even with us, I mean, we have an agenda. Our agenda is to make sure that you all are looking at your well-being and taking care of yourself so that you can get better. And as we
Mm-hmm.
grow, that agenda will grow with it. But at the end of the day, man, you have to be mindful on what you're intaking from these folks, because a lot of times it's just them running their business, and then we get slapped upside the head when it doesn't all work out for us as a community.
So true. Thank you. And thank y'all for listening. Hopefully you will join us next month. The last Thursday, typically the last Thursday of every month, that's when we'll have a new episode. So be sure to tune in. And I hope you all have a great night.
Peace.